So hello everyone. This is Talk-o-nomics podcast. I'm very happy to welcome you, James Bowater.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
James Bowater is over here. I think the UK crypto and blockchain community, like the whole community, knows you very well. I feel like you're the most connected and the most well-known person in space, especially in the physical meetup setup, because it's always nice to sort of,
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting journey, that's for sure. I mean, I live around this area, so this is home turf for me. And this very tower, actually, I had my own offices in. And when I first moved here, this is bringing back memories. We're on level 39. My first entrance into this building was on the east side, coming through the 49th floor.
Wow.
Window. I came up on a builder's lift and came in through the window with my mum, because we were resident here, and it was pretty amazing. And even then, you just got the sense that this would be London's equivalent of Manhattan, and I was right.
It's
and as I said, this particular floor is a brilliant is still a brilliant collaboration. But it was founded by a friend of mine, Eric van der Klee, who, he's a pretty dynamic guy, and one of the many people I've gotten to know. But to your point about the whole journey, but essentially, I was having drinks downstairs actually, and I met a friend of mine who runs the commercial arm of he's the chief commercial officer of CTM Media Group, which is obviously my parent of the newspaper, and a guy called Harry Owen, a good guy. And I think what started out at blockchain and beers, or blockchain, beers and blockchain at at Boisdale, turned in very quickly to crypto AM, and we chose crypto because it's a sort of a phrase that, it's a word that people sort of go, crypto. I mean, blockchain AM didn't have quite the same resonance as crypto
absolutely.
AM, because obviously we got City
good
AM,
with City
crypto AM.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've got to thank the whole bunch at City AM, because actually they took a real risk. And I think to this day we're the only mainstream publisher to actually do this on a regular and afford so much real estate to the subject. And I think what was really interesting is that, and again, it was partially because, again, it wasn't by design. It's all evolved, because I knew next to nothing about any of it. I mean,
So for those of who are watching or listening and don't know, CTAM is the newspaper that everyone reads on their commute to work, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's very popular.
Especially people with a bent towards financial stories, and also I think a lot of people, interestingly, because again I knew very little about CTM before I got involved, and I sort of tend to be one of those people who just want to pick up anything, when I'm on a tube. But I was pleasantly surprised to find out actually how many people gravitate towards that publication, because it's incredibly well written. They've got an amazing team of journalists. I'm not a journalist, by the way. I would never claim to be a journalist. That would be very, very mean to my colleagues who work incredibly hard for their art and skill. I think if I'm right, CTM was founded about 2004. It's about 15 years old now, and has grown into, I think we print something around don't shoot me if I'm wrong, but it was about 95,000 copies, and I think the readership's about 320,000. And if you think about it, that's the population of Malta, isn't it? Nearly.
It's a very responsible work, because it's basically
I remember every day.
Every single day,
it's Monday to Friday, but it's nonetheless
it's very responsible, because in up to the near future, crypto had this, bad flavor when mostly covered by journalists.
Sure. I mean, look, City AM is, as I said, they took I think they took an interesting risk. I mean, I think we agreed a 12-week trial period, and it went in fact, we went straight into a double page spread rather than a single page, and I'm really grateful that that was the way that it occurred, because it's got a wonderful format and feel to it. Because we do, I mean, there's obviously, because it's a newspaper that is given out freely. You know, of course, there's got to be some advertisements and paid for stuff and all the rest of it, and it's you know, understood and it's clear. But I think that where we've got the balance beautifully is that there is a balance between giving new entrants to the market who've got no budget at all, you know, exposure, and enables also me to enable, you know, to find hugely intelligent, bright people to share their thoughts and stuff in the paper. So we now got Crypto AM Industry Voices. You know, we have the likes of Charles Hoskinson, the founder of IOHK, and Cardano doing that. We've got you know, people like Daniel Dahl-Steinberg who co-founded the Atari token, or actually was the initial founder of Atari token. You know, we get some very interesting, good, solid people giving their thoughts freely to share with the audience, and I think that's really where the journey started all those months ago. I mean, I think my first edition was on the 18th of June last year.
Oh, okay.
So we're just over a year old now.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, a year in crypto
bear
is
it's
quite
10
a lot.
years in real life.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it was really rather wonderful, because I had a it was the second edition of the Crypto AM keynote panel and networking event. I mean, and basically, you know, you opened with how this is all built up, and I think that the event side of it and the physical interaction side of it has really been an important part of what I do. And certainly that was really good fun. We did it at a place called Smith and Walensky in near the Strand. You know, nice venue, great food, great wine. In other words, you're not going away thinking, hang on, I mean, I know it sounds pathetic, but actually if you leave somewhere going, oh my God, I've got a headache, or that was, you know, I mean, if you leave with a bad taste in your mouth, you don't really think about the content of what was actually shared that night. So you've got to get that side of right. So the attention to detail is amazing, really important. My attention to detail is quite good, but I'm very hands-on. So I manage the guest list myself. I try. I mean, the Crypto AM. Blockchain breakfast at Balthazar, for example. This morning I had the fourth one, and it's really, really, really good. It's a 2-hour breakfast. Again, everything that I do tries to be as informal as possible without, you know, having that awful pressure of, you know, having to perform. So I don't really like, you know, putting people on the spot to, you know, I mean, everyone gets their 5, you know, not 5 minutes, but, you know, I mean, we can't try and keep it short and sweet. Because everyone else, look, we're all adults. If I want to talk to, you know, Charles Hayter at Crypto Compare, I can walk over to Charles and shake him by the hand and say, I'd love to talk to you about what I'm doing. Yeah. And if similarly, Eric Van der Klee, who founded this place, was there this morning. So people who wanted to find out about anything that he's done or doing, you know, can go up and talk to him. So you don't need this whole rambling. Yeah. Oh God, is that the time? When are we going to eat? When are we going to sit down? What are we? You know. The only bad side is it's I've put on an awful lot of weight since we started.
I can imagine, because on your events the food is very tasty. So you're also kind of connecting the community and connecting people who are interested in the technology and in crypto and, you know, in the sphere in general. So. Do you feel like, you know, you said you've been for over 1 year in the space. Do you think the space has changed somehow? Like, how do you think, what was the dynamic of the people in the team? Like, has it changed in any sense, shape or form?
Yeah, I think it has fundamentally, actually. I mean, I think everyone got thoroughly overexcited and, you know, jumped on, I think that, you know, that overused but fairly important phrase, jumping on a bandwagon. Look, I mean, blockchain blockchain's been around for ages in various forms, but in terms of bringing the right combination of technology together to form, the mother of all of them, or the father of all of them, whichever gender you want to apply, or them of them. And ironically, the founder, we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, but 2008, and then in the Genesis block of Bitcoin, having the embedded in the Genesis block the message of the headline of the Times newspaper of the day, Chancellor on the brink of a bailout. It's not, that's not lost on a lot of people. And I think 10 years on, and it's this is the 10th anniversary year of Bitcoin. And here we are again, I think, on the brink of something pretty horrific when it comes to financial markets. And I'm not an expert. I don't profess to be an expert, but I think I'm a concerned citizen, and you can see the writing on the wall all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's not pretty. So that being said, it's, these new applications for, distributed ledger technology and all the things that drive it, none of it gets built in a day, and especially if you're going to do it right. I've been lucky enough to get to know, for example, Charles Hoskinson. I mean, I'm fairly unashamed when I personally talk about I genuinely believe that the way Cardano are going about things is a good thing. They're taking it incredibly seriously, and I think the attitude is that if you apply the formal methods and analysis to what you're doing when you're being entrusted with people's money, identity, and all the rest of it, if you're applying the same level of care as NASA or Boeing or any of the other companies that are putting people's lives at risk, if you apply that same standard to what you're doing, of course it's going to take longer, but at least if you get to the other end of it and it's a working thing, then God willing and a fair breeze, you've got something that won't break. Interestingly, Bitcoin hasn't broken at all, the underlying technology, since inception.
So what excites you most about blockchain and crypto? You sort of, when you discovered it and got into it, what was that one kind of thing that really, really made you think this is really great?
I don't think there's any one particular thing that does, scream out at me, other than the fact that I think that, having it's all, and I'm not going to go down the sort of libertarian, I think that the idea of creating something that isn't, controlled or manipulated, and again, I'm not going to get too political, but I think we've seen the shift. I remember when I was growing up that Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher were considered sort of almost fascist by the sort of student youth at the time. But if you look at Ronald Reagan's speeches now, he wouldn't even be allowed in the Democrat Party. The polar shift in politics, and also since the financial disaster of, how many financial disasters we had, but the 2008 one. I think that if there's a way in which, and it's almost like letting the market decide rather than having outside interference. And if there is if we get to that point where actually it normalizes, the volatility kind of eradicates over, there are lots of different things that seem to be occurring. Certainly Libra, that's had a massive effect on things. But again, in order for anything like that to work, you've got to have stability. So I was, for my own part, looking at and thinking about ways that volatility could be removed, and I was therefore, I was going down the path of stablecoin ideas, and I think stablecoin's a misnomer anyway. But I think my solution was an index coin of some sort, so relating to a basket of things that were vaguely predictable, and you could maybe have. It's rather having a balanced portfolio approach. That would be quite cool. But taking it away from sovereign nation sort of decision making, which is always, I think,
risky.
Well, it's not just risk. It's more. It's less to do with risk, actually. In my view, it's more to do with. Wouldn't it be nice if I mean, the utopian idea is that you have a global currency that works for all, and you know, taxation becomes something that's automatic, and actually, a lot of people have talked about taxation as being something that would be a lot more collectible if it was a level playing field all around the place. I mean, but you know, people want their independence. People want to have the ability to adjust their own economies according to the circumstances of the country, and I think that obviously still stands. So, I mean, you know, there's a balance in here somewhere. So I think that the decentralized dream can't possibly work. A fully centralized thing is probably not where we want to be, given what we've got now. So a balance between the two,
so
I would think makes sense.
Yeah, I see.
So, but I'm learning. I've only been in it for a year.
Yeah. I mean, it's as I said, 1 year is quite a lot for this industry. It feels like, you know, it's been a while. But you feel like many new projects that are starting out in the space. Obviously, like, you know, they do need some kind of exposure, and they do need to tell about what they are doing. And you know, crypto AM is the space which kind of, you know, could help with coverage. Yeah. What kind of stories are you interested in? Like, what type of things would really interest you, saying, oh, you know, this is what I want to write about today, this is what I want to share with these 95,000 people who are going to read it next morning? Like, I
kind of take a slightly different approach to putting each week together. It's more of I think I sort of look at myself slightly more as a managing editor and a sort of a news highlight of the previous week. In as much as I'm aggregating a combination of stories. I mean, we've got a format that works. So we have our spotlight piece every week, which is really where, you know, companies wanting to talk directly to the audience can have their moment. I have a lot more to do with the guidance of the thought leader pieces. I mean, one of the most important things I've done is build the crypto community WhatsApp group, and I guard that quite jealously. It's 200. It's a max. So it's 257, and we occasionally sort of suggest to people, maybe, you know, if they're not really engaged, they might want to make space for other people, and that's where the ongoing sort of melting pot happens. But then there's also the crypto and breakfast group, which again is it's an adjunct to that. But you know, by actually having the physical meetup, so we do the breakfast every 3 weeks, pretty much. The idea of the networking panel, so the keynote networking panel event, I'm trying to do at least 3 or 4 of those a year. And now, what is quite fun, and I think it's going to be on the 18th of March next year, we're going to launch the Crypto AM Awards.
Oh, okay. That's really cool.
So that's, you heard it here first. Yeah,
nice.
That's going to be awesome. Going to do it here in Canary Wharf, at Boisdale's, just literally out the window there. And it's going to be great. I got some interesting people. Certainly, I'm hoping that one of the people who's going to attend, I can't tell you who, but they'll be very important to the City of London. Very central figure to the City of London will be taking part, and hopefully handing out a few of the awards. So that's going to be
sounds cool.
Well, there's a lot of work to do.
Sounds a place to be.
Yeah, but that's going to be good. But obviously, don't forget we do AI. Blockchain, crypto, digital assets, DLT, tokenization. So actually, as I said, crypto AM itself is a much wider remit than.
So how is your learning curve? Many people get really overwhelmed when they just get into the space, and you know, even like the practical things like opening a wallet, buying the first Bitcoin, and all that stuff that is very, very complex. You know, at first sight, it's kind of, until you do it, you don't really. It's hard to wrap your head around.
I'll be completely honest with you. I mean, overwhelming is quite a good turn of phrase, because there is so much information.
Yeah.
So much information. I mean, I used to be very good at remembering people's names and then faces and birthdays, and a number of times I'm just like, I'm sorry, people. I'm doing my best. That's why, again, as I said, on the smaller things, you know, like the events, I try and manage the guest list myself so that I can you know, it fixes, but out of context, seeing people. So I've met some people in the street who recognise me, and I go, I think we've met, but I can't remember where. So, but applying also the learning element to it. I've got a multitude of accounts and wallets that I probably have got little tiny bits of things somewhere. You know, when I'm, you know, 5 quid's worth in or something like that. Learning how to transfer from one to another. I mean, one of the things I really want to do is to go. I mean, one of my community members runs a crypto trading group sort of learning thing, and I've always said that probably I ought to do that. I'd quite like to go to the side business school at Oxford to do their 6-week blockchain course, but I just simply don't have the time. I don't think. I just, you know, so I think I've resigned myself to a little bit of surrounding myself with some brilliantly cool people with great minds who, if I'm in serious trouble, I can go and ask.
Yeah, that's the shortcut, right?
That is my shortcut. So I mean, if you ask me to write an in-depth book about it,
no way.
But I think what is surprising is that actually, by grabbing a little bit and often enough and having interactions, you start to pick things up and. You know, ICOs versus STOs versus, you know, BTC versus ETH versus XRP being Ripple. I mean, all of the things that my readers might slightly now be picking up on with me, or at least I hope. I mean, that was the whole point of the journey in the first place.
So what do you think? Like, you know, we always talk about mass adoption, and I think that's, you know, the biggest barrier is that things are not very simple, things are not user friendly. For people like us, it's a big challenge to get into it because there is it's a challenge. It's not simple.
All right.
It's
well, I
complex.
think. Look, I mean, ultimately, if you want to fix your, you know, your plumbing, you call a plumber. If you want to fix your electricity, you call an electrician. What we're doing at the moment, and what actually, and that sort of goes back to, you know, we're only 10 years since, you know, Bitcoin's inception. And again, sorry, it sounds like I'm just parroting the guy, but Charles Hoskinson goes, for this to work, you need interoperability, scalability, and sustainability, and I couldn't agree more. And ultimately, what we're doing is we're building the pipes, the wires, the taps, the switches. And does anyone actually really give a rat's ass about what's behind the scenes? And I'm talking about Joe Public. I just want to know that it works. Yeah. So user experience. User interface, all of that stuff. The simpler, the better.
Later. It's not here yet.
Oh
right?
God, no. And actually, you know, we're probably another 10 years away. You know, and I think that the other thing that's kind of boring in the space, and again, looking in from an outside perspective, is all of the sort of ego and infighting that's occurred, and I think that does a lot of damage. To the space, and when you actually really think about it, I think the current market cap is 240 billion dollars. Well, I mean, that's like, you know, I mean, that's a sneeze on the balance sheet to Facebook, as we've just seen with the Libra project. So I mean, all these major corporations like Apple, Amazon, and everyone's just waiting in the wings. Letting everyone do the hard work, and then, you know, why spend all of your hard-earned money until you know it's going to work, and then when you know it's working, I'm almost sure that they're going to just snap it up.
So Facebook Libra had, you know, caused lots of controversy around it. Then, you know, there are pros and cons. Many people who love the idea because they say it will contribute to the mass adoption. Yeah, I mean, there are some who say it's not even a cryptocurrency and are very negative about it.
Yeah, but but that's purist talk. I mean, ultimately, you know, whether you call I mean, I know people who call, you know, cars by their color. I mean, you know, it's different people got different viewpoints on.
So what's yours?
Well, I think Libra chucking that proverbial grenade into the mix has been brilliant, because what it's done absolutely is it's drawn focus to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And one of the I mean, look, we're in an interesting place in Britain, as we know. with the whole Brexit situation. And it naturally leads you to thinking about what happens next. I mean, we've all talked about being part of the European Union. Well, look, that's 27 plus us, 28, so 28 member states. And then you go, okay, well, let's look at the Commonwealth, for example. Now, the Commonwealth has one thing that really binds it, well, two things that really bind it. One, the head of state's the Queen of England. The other one is that that all 53 member states of the Commonwealth have one thing, which is all of their law is based on English law. And, forgive me, but that population is 2.5 billion. And it's not lost on me the irony that Facebook's population, if you take it in its true sense, if you take it as published, is 2.5 billion. And that's why I think that the US Senate last week was so terrified, because suddenly you're talking about a corporation being referred to as having its own population and being its own country in a sense, and therefore having its own sovereign currency. And I think Doughton from the London Stock Exchange, he was on a panel with me today, hit the nail on the head. It might not have been him, it might have actually been somebody else, it doesn't matter, but one of the panelists said, don't want to misattribute it, but one of the panelists said that the fear is that if all of this external money is locked up, as effectively like the central bank of Libra is in Switzerland. And bear in mind that Facebook's got nothing to. I mean, they own 1%, I think, of the foundation element, which is really where everything's going to be run from that perspective. The Swiss foundation of Libra. And I think there was a time that Facebook didn't even want to have anything to do with Libra. Their commercial aim is actually Calibra, the wallet. It's nothing to do with Libra itself because of all of that scrutiny. And I think that, so the taking 2.5 billion people as a population. I mean, I just found 53 countries in the Commonwealth equaling Facebook. It was quite funny, but anyway. Last week, certainly I think we all know what happened last week with David Marcus, who actually, I think you might know more than I do. I think he was one of the key people or founders at PayPal, which is Elon Musk's sort of original fortune base, and certainly knows what he's talking about. And he was grilled quite thoroughly, poor guy, and I think did an incredibly good job under that level of scrutiny. But what I found really interesting was that, and I wrote about it this morning in my column today, because it's a Tuesday, that Libra bad, Bitcoin good. I was like, what? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Suddenly the sheer panic and size of the problem that they perceive, I mean, and don't forget, when you have a public inquiry like that, there's an awful lot of politicians who want to get their airtime and be known for some sort of revolutionary or get the spotlight statements. But I mean, I think what was interesting was that, I mean, we've certainly seen the price fluctuation almost going in line with Libra bad, Bitcoin good, and
it's interesting actually, because do you have the same impression that the crypto communities are overly passionate, and whatever happens, it's kind of, you get this extreme reaction straight away, and then it rolls out to something else?
Yeah, I mean, but it goes back to I mean, of course, there's going to be polar arguments within the community because it's still a nascent industry, and as I said, everyone's building the protocols, and so of course someone's going to say, well, my protocol is better than your protocol. The one that stands out though is Bitcoin, because it was the best mic drop ever. Satoshi Nakamoto, whether it's a he, she, it's a them, or whatever, no one knows who they are,
and it's proved.
You get John McAfee saying, well, I know who it is, and you'll probably get Craig Wright saying, I am Satoshi, and then that's going very badly, I think, over there. And then obviously he's got his supporters who understandably are saying, no, but he really is. Who to believe? Ultimately, I think the wider audience, which is actually the more important bunch, don't give a monkeys whether that is or isn't. But ironically, but Bitcoin itself, you can't sue anyone, you can't send anyone to jail. There's no fear factor, so it just exists and it grows.
Purely decentralized.
So I think that there's certainly Anthony Pompliano, Pomp, Safety, Amos, they're all very passionate about the strength of Bitcoin and the 21 million cap is, and actually it's completely logical. It's completely logical. If you've got 21 million only ever going to be mined, and I think, let's face it, I think 3 or 4 million of them are either lost to the wind or locked or forever gone. Yeah. There's an awful lot of people in the world. Yeah, and I think 2050 we're going to have hit 10 billion.
Yeah, at some
planet
point
population.
You hit the max of the Bitcoin, and then the demand will be higher than the supply.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean,
logically, if you follow that logic, it should work out. So there is a thing in there.
I mean, I know in this whole conversation we've been flying, hither, thither, and all the rest of it. But I think ultimately that the progression, you're gonna have, as I said, people who are defending their pitch violently and being as mouthy as they possibly can. But ultimately, once there'll be winners and there'll be losers.
Yeah.
And I mean, rather like with Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, those are clear winners. I have no idea ultimately who in the, as it were, protocol wars is going to win out.
Yeah,
I've got
it's
a lot
hard
of
to predict. Yeah.
I've personally got, and I don't actually own anything, by the way. I don't own. I might have the odd pounds worth here or 20 quid's worth there of stuff, but ultimately maybe I'll have a lot more. I don't know. If one of my own projects comes to pass, and but I think that there's a bit of me that thinks that if Cardano get it right, that they're going to actually be a force to be reckoned with, because they're doing it the way that I said to you. I said that it's nothing to do with the friendships that I built up in that organisation, because I know a lot of other people. I mean, I've certainly Roger Ver's a really passionate, good guy, and I've certainly met him, and he works with a friend of mine who's an old family friend. So, I mean, there are people and places to go that you kind of get a little bit more of a good vibe, and another, and I know that Roger's in town at the moment, and I know a friend of mine's spending time with him. So there are people who are passionate for the right reasons, I think, and will see it through. But ultimately, if the technology is true and works, they will win.
Yeah.
And it's not a question of winning, because as we've said before, interoperability is the only way we're going to get scale.
Yeah.
And the only way we're going to get mass adoption is through scale. But equally, the other massive bit that we haven't touched on at all is the regulatory framework, because ultimately, I mean, China, for example, have said that Bitcoin is now classed as digital property, and it's perfectly right. That's a lot further than other people have gone.
Yeah. Regulation is going to be a key to.
And that's why I made the point about the Commonwealth, by the way, because actually 53 nation states that have got a similar law framework. And there's a wonderful, wonderful person called Loretta Joseph. She's a real dynamo in the space. I think she's one of the most important from the point of view of the regulatory stuff. I mean, she helped Bermuda, she's helped Mauritius, Serbia, Antigua Barbuda. I mean, she's a chick on a mission, and a single mum as well to boot.
Wow. So what do you think about regulation? I mean, it's getting more and more regulated, obviously, for obvious reasons, and it's getting kind of more structured from that respect. Do you think it's a good sign that it becomes more regulated?
Yeah, I do actually. I do, and I think the absolute key is it has to be balanced, it has to be fair, not reactionary, and it has to be suitable to not stifle innovation. That is critical, and I think most people agree on that. And people who, sorry guys. I mean, I know that the cypherpunks were all, right, well, anti-establishment, do this, do that. But in order for institutional adoption to take place, we've got to have the right regulation in place so that they can actually use their client money to invest in digital assets.
Yeah.
Without it, they can't. So that blocks that. So I'm talking about pension funds and, I mean, high net worth individuals can do what they want, I suppose. But there are other organisations, like big in investment banks that can't touch it because they're not allowed to, not because they don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that look, for every wonderful story of somebody, inheriting a little bit of money and buying Bitcoin at the right price and being a multi-millionaire as a consequence, yeah, of course there are going to be good luck stories like that. But one of the biggest problems, one of the awful things about media hype and the explosion of price that we saw in 2017, where it went up to 20,000, just over 20,000, was if you're halfway sensible, you look at the all-time lows, you don't look at the all-time highs. You say, okay, well, isn't it ironic that it took only 3 months to do this? But if you look at track, so that's an aberration in a sense, and it was all driven by excitement. So, and you know damn well that there's a lot of people are going to be hurt on the way down, and I think that to that end, obviously regulation to prevent what I would say, well, I mean, there's nasty behaviour. I mean, I want to swear, but I can't. You know what I mean? They're just pretty unscrupulous people. They're like flies to the proverbial poo mountain. And they're only in it to do one thing, which is to empty the pockets of the most vulnerable, gullible, ill-informed, uneducated, whatever you want to call it. And even actually, ironically, even some of the most informed, well-educated people also got burnt. So it's not, it's not just ignorance. So having sensible, balanced regulation is essential, I think.
So do you think that because there was some portion of contribution by media as well, as you mentioned, do you think the media should be regulated as well when they talk about the sensible topics, regulated?
Listen, I absolutely. I'm going to plead the fifth on this one. I am not a journalist. I told you that at the beginning. I mean, I think that, as I said, it would not be fair on colleagues of mine who work bloody hard at their career as a journalist. I'd like to think that I've got a good eye for curating stuff, and I think that I can write reasonably well. That does not make me a journalist or qualified to say that I am. So I'm certainly not going to talk about anything to do with regulating the press. But that being said, fake news is a massive problem. And if there's a way that, and ironically, blockchain can be a real boon to helping on that front. I mean, I met a kid in
the trust component.
Well, no, I got quite excited because I met a kid in a really nice guy who one of those sort of child geniuses. I mean, a guy called Ilya in Kiev. I've been to Ukraine a few times, and he'd sort of come up with a proof of truth algorithm, and I just thought actually that was quite interesting, and I was very, very happy to publish him. And it was ironic. It was the September the 11th edition. I won't forget it. It was like shining a lantern was the graphic, because I've got this. We do all our own. I do with Bowater Media. We do our own graphics in the page, and I work with my designer Phil. He's brilliant, and he's worked with me since he was 17 years old. So we kind of get that. So all the graphics are pretty cool, I think, in what we do. But Ilya was, that was a really interesting fight. He'd won the coding contest for Google twice, and he was only 19 when I met him.
Nice.
Things like that are quite exciting. Whether they're deliverable, I don't know.
Yeah, the time will tell, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so if we need to wrap it up, let's say, what would you like to see in this space in 10 years from now, for example?
No, I think we need to. I think we need to look more close.
Closer,
nearer future.
Okay, choose the timeline.
We need uncertainty to be removed.
Okay.
That requires And I think that's actually that is actually one of the best things that's happened as a consequence of Libra, chucking the metaphorical grenade into the mix. It means that everybody has suddenly gone, and I'm talking about CEOs around a boardroom table to, regulators in each of the various jurisdictions, saying, actually, we've got to head, this is going to happen with or without us. Mm-hmm. So let's get on with it, get it right. And I think also what would be really nice to see is a lot more patience applied. Running fast and fixing shit later doesn't necessarily make it the right way. I mean, it works in some instances, but I think it's dangerous. So I'd like to see a lot more. I think with regulatory certainty, actually find decent. I'm talking about the base stuff. I'm not talking about because it's always going to evolve.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because there are going to be loopholes or this exposed or that exposed, like in any regulatory framework. But at least if we move quicker, it gives everyone, and because there are a lot of projects, so you've invested a lot of time, effort, money, and investors' money who are, not scam artists or anything like that. They're genuinely hardworking people who've got a vision, and it would be nice to know that they know that their work isn't for nothing as well. So I think it's not, I mean, in 10 years' time, I'd like there not to be a discussion about any of this. It'd be, it works. And isn't it great? It's part of life, like email or a website.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the 10-year vision. The short-term vision is let's help the technologists, let's help the entrepreneurs, give them the framework to build what we want in 10 years' time, which is a usable thing that's, safe and a bit more, benefit to all, really.
Absolutely. I think there is a lot that, there is a big potential, and if we are able to set up the conditions that will help that flourish, then we'll end up with amazing.
Yeah, the genie's out of the bottle. You can't put it back in, so you might as well do. Yeah. We don't want to force anything underground again. Let's help.
And I don't think it will be possible to do that anymore. No. It's too late. So, yeah.
I mean, to that end, I'll end on something that Peter McCormack, the podcaster journalist, brought up the other day, which I thought, did you know about that sort of drug baron El Chapo?
Yeah.
He got sentenced recently, and one of the things that absolutely blew my mind is that Ross Ulbricht, the kid who was behind the Silk Road, his combined jail sentence is like 5 times the length of El Chapo's. So that needs to be looked at. I think he's done his time.
Yeah, he's been how many years?
I dread to think, but I mean,
he's been there already for a few years.
I think he's been made a scapegoat, and I think that's wrong. But hey, that's just my little piece of social work for the day. Anyway.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for coming. I really appreciate your time. It was really nice to have a chat, because I've been on your events very often, at least 2-3 of them, but we. Because you're so popular, I never had a chance to talk to you. So, this.
Well, we did meet at the last one.
Yeah, but it was just, it's very brief, and we didn't have really time and space to actually have a conversation. So,
I mean, despite outward appearance, I'm actually quite shy as well. So, I also get very nervous at all of these things.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot.
Alrighty.
Thanks.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you.